The catalogers. The Zarthuan collective had watched over the stars for millennia, spreading their influence like a net across the galaxy. Their archivists prided themselves on their meticulous records. Every intelligent species encountered was studied, dissected, and catalogued. Strengths were listed for exploitation, weaknesses for control. Knowledge was power, and the Zarthuan wielded it like a blade. In the grand chambers of the archive, scholars gathered before a hololithic projection of a blue and green world. Earth. Primitive, one elder hissed, mandibles clicking as his 6 eyes scanned the data streams. Bipedal mammals. Short-lived, fragile bodies. Constant internal conflict. Barely past the threshold of space travel. The others murmured agreement. They poison their own skies, wage war against themselves, and yet believe they are masters of their world, another declared. A curious delusion. Their technology is crude. Their lifespan, laughable. Their bodies, weak. If left alone, they will devour themselves within centuries. The hall buzzed with dismissive laughter. At the edge of the chamber, Archivist Tal, young by Zarthuan standards, studied the human records with growing unease. He watched footage of wars, of mushroom clouds blooming in the sky, of soldiers dragging themselves through mud and blood to reach an enemy line. He saw famine, plagues, disasters, and each time, humanity endured. Elders, Tal ventured carefully, "May I speak?" A dozen eyes turned toward him, some irritated, others amused. "These humans," he began, "they are indeed frail. Yet, consider how many times they should have perished. Ice ages, disease, wars beyond count, disasters that would have extinguished other species. But they remain. They rebuild. Always." An elder snorted. "Persistence is not strength. It is stubbornness without reason." "Perhaps," Tal said, choosing his words. "But why are they still here when logic says they should be dust? They turn every wound into a lesson, every loss into fuel. They fight each other. Yes, but does that not mean they are always preparing for the next war?" The silence that followed was brief, broken by laughter. "You give too much credit to animals gnawing on their own cage," one elder said dismissively. "What you see as resilience, I see as chaos. Their violence has no focus, no discipline. They are fractured, unworthy of Fae." The council voted, and the decision was unanimous. Earth would be claimed. Its resources were rich, its inhabitants too weak to resist. As the others dispersed, Tal lingered, eyes fixed on the projection of Earth. He saw not a fragile world, but a fire that refused to burn out. He whispered to himself, unheard by his superiors. Fragile things can be broken, but something that refuses to break, that is dangerous. And so the Zarthuan prepared their fleets, confident in their superiority. They did not yet know that they had just chosen their doom. First contact and first mistake. The skies over Earth split open with fire. From orbit, the Zarthuan fleets descended in perfect formation, their blackened hulls blotting out the sun. Cities screamed with alarms as streaks of plasma fell like rain. Towers crumbled, streets shattered, and millions stared upward in disbelief. Humanity had long dreamed of first contact, but not like this. In less than a week, major militaries fell. Satellites were blinded, command centers annihilated, air forces swatted from the sky. The Zarthuan cut communications, severed power grids, and planted their banners in smoldering ruins. From New York to Beijing, from Cairo to Sao Paulo, humanity watched its greatest cities burn. To the invaders, victory was assured. In the command chamber of their flagship, Elder Koresh reported with clinical pride. "The humans resist, but without coordination. Their weapons are primitive, their tactics scattered. Soon they will kneel." The archive scribes recorded the triumph as fact. Humans were classified as subjugated. But down on the ground, something stirred. In the rubble of Warsaw, survivors crawled from smoking ruins. Soldiers with broken rifles dragged civilians to safety. In Mexico City, a downed helicopter crew rigged its wreckage into a bomb. In the deserts of Nevada, scattered troops regrouped without orders, sharing food and weapons with whoever still breathed. The Zarthuan had expected surrender. What they met instead was defiance. By the second week, resistance cells appeared. Small at first, farmers ambushing patrols, children relaying messages across ruined streets, hackers splicing together shattered networks to coordinate attacks. Then larger, bands of soldiers, civilians, even rival gangs turned their violence against the invaders. In the forests of Eastern Europe, an entire village vanished into the trees, re-emerging at night to strike like ghosts. In Africa, tribal fighters armed with nothing but hunting rifles captured alien scouts and stripped their technology for study. In the slums of Mumbai, mechanics repurposed construction drones into makeshift war machines. Everywhere, the same message spread: fight back. Elder Karesh frowned as reports filtered in. Supply lines sabotaged. Patrols disappearing. Garrisons wiped out in the dead of night. This is not possible, he snarled. Their command structure is broken. Their species is fractured. How do they resist? Archivist Tal, silent among the council, finally spoke. You misunderstand them. Division is not weakness. It is adaptation. Every human group thinks differently, fights differently. You are not facing one army, Elder. You are facing millions of them, each one inventing new ways to kill you. Karesh dismissed him with a hiss. They are gnats, and gnats are crushed. Yet outside the safety of his warship, Earth was already changing. Humanity had taken its first blow, and instead of shattering, it had scattered like shards of glass, sharp, countless, and cutting deep. The invasion had begun as a show of domination. Now, for the first time, the Zarthuan began to feel the sting of something they had never anticipated: human persistence. The relentless ones. By the third month of the invasion, the Zarthuan were no longer laughing. Their fleets still controlled the skies, but the ground had become a nightmare. Patrols sent into ruined cities vanished without a trace. Supply convoys exploded in fire, struck by roadside bombs. Garrisons awoke to find messages scrawled in their own language on walls. We are coming. Humanity had adapted. In the ruins of London, former police officers, street gangs, and military veterans worked side by side. They struck quickly, disappearing into tunnels before the aliens could respond. In the jungles of South America, fighters used the terrain itself as a weapon, ambushing with poison traps and stolen plasma rifles. In the icy wastes of Siberia, entire units survived off the land, outlasting alien squads who could not endure the cold. Everywhere the Zarthuan turned, humans were there, bleeding them slowly, endlessly. On the flagship, Elder Karesh's voice quivered with rage. We have superior weapons. We have superior numbers. And yet, they multiply like infection. Cut off one head, and 10 more rise. Tal, watching the reports, understood. He saw images of destroyed villages where survivors armed themselves with scavenged tools. He saw children carrying messages across battle lines. He saw soldiers fighting on with broken bones, torn flesh, and no chance of victory, yet refusing to fall. They are not fighting for survival alone, Tal said quietly. They fight for each other, for vengeance, for the idea that tomorrow must exist, even if today is ashes. The other elders scoffed, but their eyes betrayed unease. On Earth, the psychological war had begun. Hackers hijacked alien transmissions, blasting eerie human music into their comms. Otherwise, recordings of alien screams from captured soldiers played back through their networks. Symbols of resistance spread like wildfire, a painted red handprint, a single phrase, still here. The Zarthuan were hunters by nature, a predator species that had always relied on overwhelming strength. But now, they found themselves prey. Humans struck at night, from alleys, from forests, from shadows. A patrol never knew if it would return. And perhaps most terrifying of all, humans learned. Every captured weapon was studied, broken apart, and rebuilt. Plasma rifles modified into traps. Alien drones reprogrammed to turn on their masters. Entire squads armed with hybrid weapons built in hidden workshops. For the first time, the invaders began to lose ground. Elder Karesh demanded reinforcements. Crush them with fire. Burn their cities to glass if you must. But the more they burned, the stronger humanity's rage grew. Every dead family birthed 100 new fighters. Every ruined city became a battlefield humans knew better than their conquerors. The Zarthuan had expected a war of conquest. Instead, they were caught in a war of extinction. And the ones fighting hardest were not soldiers, but survivors who refused to surrender. Tal's final words to the council that day echoed in the chamber like a prophecy. You believed their weakness was fragility, but you have discovered their true strength. They do not stop. They do not break. They are relentless. The deadliest species. The war for Earth reached its climax in fire. Humanity had been broken, beaten, and starved, but not defeated. From the ashes of their ruined cities, they rose with weapons of their own making, forged from alien technology and human ingenuity. Plasma cannons mounted on trucks. Fighter jets retrofitted with stolen shields. Homemade explosives deadlier than anything the Zarthuan had anticipated. The resistance was no longer scattered cells. Across continents, networks linked together. A united plan emerged, not to defend, but to strike. In the deserts of North Africa, human forces ambushed an alien supply line, seizing ships once thought untouchable. In Europe, resistance leaders coordinated simultaneous uprisings in dozens of cities. In the Pacific, human submarines struck at orbital relays, crippling the invaders' communication web. For the first time, the Zarthuan were on the defensive. On their flagship, Elder Koresh raged at the council. This world consumes us. Every victory becomes a loss. Every death we inflict births 10 more enemies. They cannot be exterminated. Tal answered softly, though his words carried like thunder. You were warned. Humanity is not a fractured species. It is a storm. Every blow you strike against them only feeds it. You came to break them, and instead, you have made them unstoppable. The elders hissed, but deep in their black eyes, fear had taken root. On Earth, the final counterstrikes began. In New York, humans stormed an alien command center, hacking into their systems and broadcasting a single message across the galaxy. Earth will never kneel. In the ruins of Tokyo, resistance fighters turned alien war machines against their masters. In the jungles of the Amazon, soldiers armed with hybrid rifles cut down Zarthuan platoons, chanting as they advanced. The tide was irreversible. The Zarthuan tried to retreat in order, but panic spread like wildfire. Ships overloaded with wounded fled orbit, colliding in chaos. Ground forces abandoned garrisons, chased into the wilderness by humans who refused to stop until every trace of the invader was erased. It was not just defeat. It was humiliation. In the archive, Tal recorded the truth that his elders refused to speak aloud. Humans are not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most intelligent. They are fragile creatures of flesh and bone, with lives short as shadows. Yet this fragility is their greatest strength. They adapt, they endure, and when pushed to the edge, they fight with a fury no empire can contain. What makes them the deadliest species is not their weapons, but their will. As the last Zarthuan fleet limped from orbit, Earth burned, not in surrender, but in victory. Cities lay in ruins, billions mourned their dead, yet the survivors stood unbroken. For the first time in galactic history, the species had driven the Zarthuan back. On that day, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. To fight humans is to invite your own destruction. And the name whispered with fear across the stars was no longer Zarthuan, but human.